Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to be checking out a little ghost flicker effect, invisible flicker, whatever you want to call it. It's the effect of making someone invisible or transparent so you can see through them to see the background. What I mean by this is as the flicker happens, you will be able to see through their body, and that is correct. You can see through and see the trees in the background in both of the flickers. Now, this effect is kind of awesome, but at the same time, it won't work for every clip. Now, this is using Adobe's new tool called Project Cloak within After Effects. So without further ado, let's jump on into it. What you're going to do is drag your clip into After Effects and create a new composition. Now, this effect won't work with every clip, so you're going to have to play around with different clips. However, I found that it works best in really short scenarios. The good thing is there's a short way to do this effect and there is a long way. Firstly, I'm going to show you guys how to do this the short way. Select your clip and then go to an area where you want to apply this flicker. I found that it works best when you only use a couple frames. Once you find the area that you want to apply the invisible flicker to, all you have to do is go up to the top and hold down on the mask tool and select ellipse tool. All we have to do now is simply drag the ellipse around our subject. This doesn't have to be perfect since this is the quick way. And then we're going to go down to the mask properties down here and change it to none so we can see what we're working with. We're also going to check this little arrow and select the mask path keyframe button so we can start to keyframe this mask. So hold Control and go right on the arrow key a couple times. As you can see, she has a boot down here. So what we're going to do is scroll out a tiny bit and manipulate our mask. Hit V on our keyboard and deselect your mask and then select any of the points to adjust your mask. You can drag these lines on the end to change the Bezier curve on your mask. It works better when you get it close, but for the sake of time, I'm just showing you the quick example. Now, once you're happy with that, hold Control and the right arrow key a couple more times and then adjust your mask as needed. It doesn't have to be perfect. So once you get a couple frames done, you can begin the next step. So I'm going to finish out on this frame right here. Once you're happy with that, all you have to do now is change your mask overlay to subtract. That will create a black box on your figure. Now you want to hit these two arrow keys at the top and change your panel to motion tracking. As soon as you'll do that, you'll see a content aware fill in this dialog box. You can click and drag that and reposition it anywhere you like. Now, this is a new tool within After Effects, and it's called Project Cloak, kind of, where you can remove objects from videos, but it's still not the best tool. But I will have a tutorial on that coming soon, hopefully, if I can figure it out. First things first, you want to change your alpha expansion to 1. That will basically adjust how many pixels it reads on the edges, and then you have a fill method. The fill method changes based on what you are trying to remove. Typically, I will always stick with object. And now you can choose your range. Since we only manipulated a couple frames here and there, what I'm going to do is drag this work area start to the beginning of my mask and then go to the end, and then I'm also going to drag the work area end to the end of my mask. Just like so. Now all you have to do is make sure your mask is selected and on subtract, and then go to generate fill layer. What this does is it will analyze that entire area and try to do what Photoshop does with content aware. It'll read all the surrounding pixels and try to paint an image of what should be there in the black area. Since we're waiting for that to render, now's a good time to follow me on Instagram if you aren't already. I post some dope stuff, and I'd love to connect with you guys. Shoot me a DM. Depending on your computer, this may take some time, so that's why I like starting off with some small clips here and there. Once the render has finished, all it did was create a new fill layer, which is going to fill in all of the black space that we had with our mask. Now, it's not perfect, but it looks pretty good for how quickly we did that. From here, we're going to go to our mask layer and select subtract and change that to none. So now when we scroll through here, you can see that our subject just kind of disappears here and there. I'm going to drag my work area back out to the full length. And as you see, if we play through this, our subject kind of disappears and reappears really quick. But I don't like how it's not perfect. So what we're going to do is the next step in the effect, which is clicking on the new fill layer, and you can click enter and rename this to clean plate. because that is our clean plate theoretically. Now, if you hit T on the keyboard, that'll bring up the opacity tool. And now we can start to manipulate our opacity to bring the subject back or take the subject away. Once your subject or object is about at half transparency, it kind of looks really awesome. It has this ghost effect. So if you imagine that you did this the entire time with the ghosting effect, it's pretty cool because that's when it looks most realistic. From here, all I do now is keyframe the opacity. So bring it to 0, hit this toggle keyframe button, hit Control and the right arrow key, and that'll jump you 1 frame in the right direction. Now let's just play with your opacity, and you can play with this however you want to get different effects. Now keep in mind, just keep using Control and right arrow key, or scrub through if you want to as well. Some frames look better than others, so keep playing around. I'm just changing the opacity from 100 to like 80, down to 20%, etc., just to get the effect that you are trying to go for. Once you keyframed everything, you can play back through it and see what it looks like. As you can see at the top on this frame, it doesn't look the best, so I may want to change this blending mode to 0. So now we have the invisible flicker effect done the fast way. Now, I'm going to show you the next step, which is a little bit more complex, but this is the longer way, but you will get a better looking flicker. In order to do this, you can just pick another part of the clip, and I think this clip right here, right when she comes out of the tree, would work best. So what you have to do is the same process by selecting your clip and then going up to the mask area, except this time we're going to click the pen tool. In order to not get confused by the first mask, we're going to select this button right here, which will lock that mask entirely. And now we can start painting around our subject. So what I'm going to do now is start to make points, and the more points you make, the better your mask is going to be. Keep in mind you can hold and drag to create Bezier curves if you want to do that as well. Now, when you get down to the bottom, you're going to have to go outside your video. So if you hold space, that'll bring up the move tool, and you can move your image around. Keep in mind you want to add a couple points here and there because when you are dealing with someone running, they have a lot of moving parts. Now, ideally, you want it to be as close as possible, but not on them. Now, from here, we can go to our mask 2, since this is pink. And if you don't like the color of that, you can pick something that's more vibrant, like a green, and then you'll be able to see that a lot easier. Now, the next step is to keyframe this mask to the subject as close as possible. So we're going to hit the stopwatch next to mask path and then hit Control right arrow key to jump in the right direction 1 frame. Now you'll see that we'll have to adjust all of these points individually. So what I'm going to do is hit V on my keyboard and then start to manipulate this mask. Now, as you'll see down here, there is more of the background between the legs. So what we're going to do is actually select the pen tool by clicking G, and that'll bring up the pen tool, and we can add in mask points. So I'm going to add in a couple right here, and then drag these up as needed. And then once I like what that looks like, I'm going to hit the Control and then right arrow key once, and then do the same thing. Keep in mind that if you want your mask to be more subtle and have Bezier curves, you can right click on your mask and go to Mask and Shape Path and select Roto Bezier. That'll round out all your edges. But I just like doing this. I create the Beziers when I want to by clicking and dragging with the pen tool. And then we're going to hit Control and the right arrow key again, and then adjust our mask. If you hit V on your keyboard, that will bring up your selection tool, and then you can select 1 point on your mask, then hit Control A. That will select your entire mask, so then you can move your whole mask around if need be. Also keep in mind that in order to select another point again, you click away and then back to the mask. It's kind of confusing, but once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. All you're going to do is repeat this process a couple times for as many frames as you want. All right, so again, once you like what it looks like, all you have to do is change your work area by dragging the right half to the end of this clip and your left half to the beginning of your mask layer. Scrub through and double check everything. As you can see in this layer, the legs are fine, but in this one, we never added these points. So what we're going to do is drag this one to the right and drag that one up and change the Bezier a little bit. And that looks good enough for me. Now the next step is to change our mask 2 layer to subtract and then generate fill layer with object and work area selected with an alpha expansion of 1. Awesome. So as you can see, we have a more clear and concise mask, and it honestly looks a little bit better than the first one. So in order to view this, just deselect the subtract and change it to none, and then play back through this. You can change your work area so you can view the whole thing. So this is what it looks like when you remove the subject. As you can see, it's pretty abrupt and it doesn't really fade back in. So all we're going to do is the same steps like before and keyframe the opacity on our new fill layer. Click enter to change the name of this to clean plate 2. And then from here, hit T on our keyboard to pull up the opacity tab. And let's start keyframing this by selecting that stopwatch and changing the keyframe to about 30%. Hit Control, right arrow to jump 1 frame, change it to about 86%, and then go back and let's bring this all the way back up to 4%. Let's change it to 90%. So as you can see, that flicker works a little bit better because it's not affecting anything else besides the subject. So when you flicker it on the subject, you really can't tell. But if you pause it, you can see that we have these lines here. And playing around with the alpha expansion may help out those lines a little bit. That's the flicker in a nutshell. Now, this isn't going to work for all clips. And now let's compare the two. So you can see the first example where we use the giant circle mask. It looks like this. As you can see, it's flickering a little bit more outside our subject, and it's starting to fade the background, and it makes it a little bit more noticeable. But if you spend the time, you can get a better flicker, which looks like our second one. It just takes a little bit more time. Play with this with your own footage and send me some stuff on Instagram. I'd love to check it out. I'd love to know your thoughts down below, so drop a comment, hit that like button if you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button if you're new, because I'm going to be making some more stuff in the future. And as always, I'll see you next time.